Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our March Canada Wildfire webinar. Today, we will be hosting the rescheduled CIFFC National Conversation on Fire Weather Forecasting. I'm honored to host today's session on behalf of Canada Wildfire, but cannot take credit for the concept or all of the planning that went into making this session possible. The credit belongs with Heather and the CIFFC Meteorology Working Group. Today, we will depart from our typical Canada Wildfire webinar format. The session will open with a talk from Brett, a fire weather forecaster with the BC Wildfire Service. We will then move into a discussion panel with Brett, Alice, the fire weather program lead at Alberta Forestry and Parks, Alicia, a meteorologist with the Saskatchewan Public Safety Agency, and Henry, the chief meteorologist at SPSA. Today, we will learn more about what it's like to be a fire weather forecaster and the career paths of our four panelists. If you have any questions during the session, please post them in the chat box and we will do our best to address them. With that, I'm going to hand the mic over to Brett. Welcome, Brett. I'm very happy to have you here today, and I'm looking forward to hearing about your role as a fire weather forecaster with the BC Wildfire Service.
Oh, well, thank you very much for that lovely introduction, Karen. It is an honor to be here today. So good morning to everyone from across the country, unless, of course, you're tuning in today from Atlantic Canada. I guess a good afternoon is in order for you. But yes, my name is Brett Soderholm. I am a fire weather forecaster here in BC at the BC Wildfire Service. And before I get into my full presentation today, I did want to respectfully acknowledge today that I'm joining you from the traditional and unceded territories of the Ktunaxa, the Syilx, and the Sinixt First Peoples, First Nations, down here in southeastern BC, and I'm incredibly grateful to be able to live, work, and recreate on these beautiful lands. So as Karen alluded to, thank you for everyone to take this second chance to hear me speak today. As you may have known, if you tried to tune in on February 26th, a few technological issues made that a little bit challenging, so we're going to do it all over again here. Really grateful to have this opportunity to do so. Now, one of the things I always think it's important to start off a presentation with a good piece of eye candy or something that really captures your attention. Okay. And for me, I would say the most captivating thing is probably this image right here. This would be the Donny Creek wildfire from June 4th back in 2023. If you're not familiar with this particular fire, it was actually north of Fort St. John in sort of northeastern BC. And this was a day that we were doing a really important planned ignition. The reason this fire was so impressive is because it actually at the time grew to be the largest fire fully contained within BC's borders. It actually grew to be the size of Prince Edward Island for scale. So it was a really active fire, and it certainly made my life a little bit more busy than perhaps I had bargained for. This was, of course, not the only wildfire going on in 2023, and as many as my colleagues know who are forecasting for other parts of the country, it was a particularly busy season. So I'm just going to give a quick little overview about myself. I know that today we probably have a few students right now that are joining in from various universities across the country, so welcome to you. But yeah, just wanted to let you know that I work for the Prince George Fire Center here in BC, and I've been doing that job since about September of 2020. Now, that time frame may sound a little bit familiar to you. We were full in the middle of a pandemic, and be fully transparent here, I did not really foresee myself going into this role as a fire weather forecaster. I didn't even frankly know that that was a career path that I could possibly take. The reason being is because I actually came more from a broadcast meteorology background. So I did a brief stint with CBC Vancouver from 2019 through to 2020. But prior to that, I was a briefing and operational meteorologist at the Weather Network from 2014 to 2019. Now, the Weather Network, that's in Southern Ontario. That's where I grew up. And if anyone is tuning in from that part of the world today, you know that in the summertime, we get those really big, juicy thunderstorms, right? The sky just lights up with lightning and it becomes really windy and powerful. That is exactly what got me fascinated with weather. So I tried my best to get some good grades in high school, and I ended up getting accepted into McGill for a Bachelor of Science in 2007 is when I started getting that degree by 2011. And then I stayed on to get my master's in 2013. So if anyone is tuning in from McGill today, I would be one of your alumnus, I guess, which is actually kind of sweet. Now, that said, I am a bit of a weather nerd, of course, but I have a lot of other interests that aren't just weather or, you know, flying in helicopters looking at fire. Predominantly, I'd say I'm a rock climber. So rock climber and bouldering is kind of my main thing. I love swimming. I love hiking, skiing in the wintertime. It's been a pretty good season season down here, I have to say, and then some just good old yoga and reading. So that's kind of a little bit about me. Happy to chat more in the panel discussion, but that is the context. Now, I had mentioned that I work specifically for the Prince George Fire Centre, and this is where I wanted to address something that is unique to BC. We split up our province into 6 different fire centres, and each one of these traditionally has a weather forecaster. So the main role, first of all, of my supervisor, Matt McDonald, who can't be here today, he's kind of in charge of all of us as forecasters, and he does a nice provincial overview in terms of what the weather is going to be like going across the entire province. But you can see that individually, we have all of these different areas that are taken on by one forecaster specifically. So that's me up into the far north and east. You can see the Prince George Fire Centre, pretty darn large. It's about a quarter of the landmass of the entire province. It's beautiful, it's complex, it's rugged, it keeps me on my toes. The friendliest people known to man, I'm pretty sure. So that is my little neck of the woods. But down in the southeast, we have a forecaster named Jesse Ellis, who may be familiar to some of you on this call. Really honored to have him with us because his skill set that he brings to the table is absolutely incredible. As of early 2024, we have 2 brand new hires for us. We have Warren, who is now sitting on the coastal desk, and we have Liz, who is sitting in the Kamloops Fire Centre. And you'll note that we don't have 2 specific people here for our Northwest and our Caribou Fire Centres. These are instead covered by our contractors. Now, for those of you from other agencies, you may be able to look at this list and be like, some of these names sound a little bit familiar. We have poached quite a few people out of retirement to come and help us by their own graces when it gets really busy or to handle those desks. So we are very blessed to have such a robust team of forecasters. And today I am speaking on behalf of all of them, but really we are working as a big team. Now, I'm not going to bore you today with an organizational chart because I think that that would be an easy way for you to go back to sleep or maybe enter a food coma after lunch. But what I wanted to mention is that when it comes to where the fire weather forecasters fit into the structure here, we are all a part of the Ministry of Forests. So the BC Wildfire Service itself is a part of the Ministry of Forests, and fire weather forecasters, we are actually a part of a very specific unit that's called the Predictive Services Unit. Now, if that's not a term that you've heard before, no worries. It wasn't something that I had heard prior, but it actually was modeled based on a similar service that exists in the state of Victoria in Australia. So the Predictive Services Unit, it doesn't just encompass weather forecasters, but we actually have fire behavior specialists, or FBANs, that we work very closely with. We have a beautiful network of weather network technicians. These are those amazing people that actually go out and service some of those weather stations that you're seeing on your screen right now. Without them, we wouldn't be able to collect the data that we use to inform our forecasts. On that note, we also have some incredibly talented data scientists, and we're so lucky to have an IT or a development team that's called an agile team for us. They are the ones that make incredible software for us to use on a day-to-day basis to make our predictions. So together, we all try to put our brains together in order to really gather the most information that we can to make the best informed predictions about anything relating to fire. So this could be fire weather, it could be fire behavior, or it could just be in the way that we're modernizing all of these calculations. So it really is impressive because this team has grown so much even since I was hired about 5 years ago, and really feeling grateful to be a part of that team. Now, here in BC, you may be wondering whether or not a fire weather forecaster is actually a full-time job or if it is kind of a seasonal thing, because admittedly, if it's wintertime, what fire are you forecasting? Well, we actually are full-time and we are year-round, and our responsibilities really shift depending on what's going on and what the calendar is saying. So from about April 1st to October 31st, again, roughly speaking, we're into basically our main operational mode here. So this means that we are providing regional weather briefings. Every single morning, we're writing text forecasts, we're writing very specific forecasts for a particular fire, and we also issue our own severe weather warnings. Now, these are completely independent of what Environment and Climate Change Canada offer. These are used internally to help give a bit of a heads up for our field staff. So for example, if there was a cold front making its way through my fire center, I would be in a position to issue out a severe thunderstorm warning to my fire center and let all of the staff know that they should probably seek some shelter as it passes. Now, beyond that, one of the key roles that we have throughout the fire season is manually forecasting out about 3 to 5 days for a subset of our weather stations. And the reason we do this is because as a fire center, we need to operate on a preparedness level for a given period. So translation, if I'm putting in weather data that says it's going to be relatively cool, rainy, and maybe a bit humid, there's a very good chance that our preparedness level will be a little bit lower because that's not really a conducive environment to wildfire. But by contrast, if I'm putting in very hot, dry, and windy conditions into my forecast for these next 3 to 5 days, that lets my fire center know that they'll probably need to bring on a few additional resources and sort of increase our prep level to make sure that if something were to start, we have the sufficient personnel to deal with it. So that's really how it goes throughout the main wildfire season. It does feel pretty long, but in the wintertime, which is technically still right now, our priorities rather shift to align with demand. So one of the main things that we do in the early fall is what's called custom venting forecasts. What that means is that we try to issue out a forecast where people can successfully burn their piles of debris on their property or for wildfire risk reduction and allow that smoke to really mix evenly throughout the atmosphere instead of getting trapped at the valley bottom. So that takes a good chunk of time. We also do winter forecasting for the Ministry of Transportation, which is where they might need to shut down a highway because of avalanche potential. And then we also do a lot of sort of training and onboarding with our staff. So it's really incredible to think how quickly the winters tend to pass through. One of the things that I'll say we've been doing a lot of this past winter especially is training or instructing. So S-level courses, meaning wildfire courses, either regionally or provincially or even nationally. So I've been a part of 3 courses since November. We were instructing a regional weather course, and then we had some advanced fire behavior courses, both on a provincial and a national level. So it kept me quite busy, but also keeps me sharp into the off season. And then, oh yeah, right, we're also supposed to be taking some time to rest and recharge wherever possible because these seasons do get to be quite long. Now, that's also not the end of it. So if you were curious if that was enough to keep us busy over the course of the year, we have a few extra things thrown on there. So prescribed burns, that's a season that we're entering into right now. And we have to often create spot forecasts for that to make sure the conditions are right for those burns to go off successfully. We also need to use our calculations to come up with startup indices for industry-owned weather stations. That basically just means they need to have some data to calculate fire weather indices based on their own weather stations, and we provide that for them. Occasionally, we also just need to give impromptu briefings. So for example, if the minister was going to be flying from Victoria to Kamloops, maybe one of us gets a call that asks, is his ride going to be bumpy today? Should we be prepared for a little bit of a delay? Because apparently we know everything. But then we also get people in our fire centers saying, hey, I'm going camping this weekend. Do you think it's going to rain? Like, should I be prepared for that? So we get all of those types of requests as well, which we're happy to help out with. We get requests to do historical weather data searches. So if something happened for a fire last year, we may need to provide them with that information. We help with seasonal outlooks. We do media interviews and respond to their requests. And then we also do standard operating procedures for various things and tools and products if we have the time. But you can translate that all to saying that we use our magic crystal ball as much as possible to give as much information to those who require it. Now, that is a lot, but I didn't really want to spend too much time on this, but did want to mention that in a typical workday, it is a little bit of a slog, I'll be honest. So when we are in the core of fire season, you kind of lose track of what the days are, and you're just kind of going into this operational mode. So let me be the first person to say, I am not a morning person. Like the fact that I am speaking to you this morning, it's not even 9 o'clock. This is not my comfort zone, but in the fire season, it actually makes me wake up even earlier. So I'm usually awake by about 5 to 5:30, and I'm already at my desk by about 6. I'm trying to figure out what happened with the weather since I went to bed, and then also what's likely to be happening with the weather for that day, the day after, and even into our extended range. So I'm downloading a whole bunch of products. I'm putting a presentation together that I'm going to be giving as my briefing at 9 o'clock. And it's kind of just this mad dash every single day to get caught up to speed. But the one thing I love the most, even if I'm not terribly social in the morning, at 7:45, we hop on a call with all of our forecasters from every single fire center that day across the province. So the benefit of this is that we can all independently look at our regions and we can bring to the table and to our provincial forecaster what our top priorities or concerns concerns are. So a perfect example, if a colleague of mine in the Northwest Fire Center is seeing a cold front go through his fire center at noon, I want to make sure that my story, when I tell it going through my fire center, is going to align with his. So I'll make sure that the timing that I'm talking about is sometime past noon, so maybe 3 or 4 p.m. And it gives us a chance to diagnose the potential for lightning or any other major weather events that could be going on that day. So it's a really nice sanity check. I think all of us really benefit from it. And I mean, at least I do. And then by the time that's all done, we write up our forecast and we would give our briefing by about 9 o'clock. And then we have to upload it for those who don't necessarily get to tune in live. If you're paying close attention, it's only after all of that that I get the time to eat breakfast, because it really is just such a busy morning. But then I'll actually get a little bit of a chance to review my presentation, make sure it was okay, have something to eat. And then my goal for the rest of the morning is really to tackle spot forecasts. So these are specific forecasts that I would write for a specific fire or an incident that really need to have very detailed information about the temperature, the winds, the relative humidity, and the chances of precipitation. And that largely takes up most of the rest of my day. At 10 o'clock, though, you'll see their prep call. What that means is that I'm actually tuning into a call with my fire center and making sure that I'm aware of what's going on across each individual part of my fire center or within the zone, and making sure that if they have any questions or nuances about the weather, that I'm able to pass that along to them. Then I'll just go into forecasting mode. And by the afternoon, I mean, here in BC, we love our acronyms. I'm sure each agency does. But the RWCO, that stands for the Regional Wildfire Coordination Officer, basically the person in charge of each fire center. I have a chat with them every afternoon for two reasons. The first one is to see if in real time my forecast has been panning out. So if that morning I said, hey, chance of lightning in Prince George by about 2 o'clock this afternoon, when I'm on a call with them, they can look outside and be like, not seeing your lightning, Brett. What's going on? When are we expecting to see that? Gives us a chance to chat about that. But then I also have the chance to talk with them about long-term trends and potential, because they're always trying to plan ahead for the next week or two. How many resources might they need to request or bring on? So we're able to look at what's kind of going down the pipes, as it were. Beyond that, I'm issuing weather warnings as needed. And then hopefully by about 1600, that's when I can call it a day. But as I said, twice a week minimum, I have to forecast out for a couple of stations to set our prep period. So on Sundays and Wednesdays, it takes a little bit longer. So that would be a day in the life, frankly. There's a lot going on, and I'm trying to respond to as many things as I can. But my fire center, of course, is huge, so it can be a little bit daunting at times. Now, in case you were curious, forecasters, and specifically most people who work within the BC Wildfire Service, we work a 14-3 schedule, or we mostly do this. What that means is 14 days on, 3 days off. So this is the equivalent. Honestly, it feels like working 13 Mondays in a row and getting one Friday. So we ought to honestly feel like Nine Inch Nails here, where every day is exactly the same. I personally love that song. It plays in my head a lot when I'm in my mid-rotation there. But the one benefit I would say is being a forecaster, we have a little bit more flexibility. We can often reset a little bit earlier, meaning going on our days off a bit earlier, and for longer if time permits. And frankly, it really is just a safety issue. If my brain is not braining properly and I start making poor decisions or not really informed decisions, it's a safety risk. And that's not something we ever want to jeopardize with our crews, who are especially out there on the front lines. But yeah, it certainly does get a little bit busy and repetitive when we're going through the motions. Now, in terms of some of the tools that we use to do our jobs, because I know some forecasters who may be tuning in all have our own preferences, and we use various technology available to us. The first one, this is actually a program called Meteostar. This allows us to download charts that we use for our weather briefings in the morning. So this will show us things like maximum temperature for the day, or maximum winds, or in this case, what our minimum relative humidity is going to be, all these important variables that are important for wildfire. So that's a good starting point for us. We also have a platform online that we love to use called Weatherbell. This is a subscription service, but frankly, it's one of the best tools that I can think of to visually show all of the weather models across the world in a very nice visual format. And it's great just for looking at long-term trends as well. Then in terms of real-time stuff, of course, we use Environment Canada's radar network. We love using various satellite imagery that's out there to see things in real time. Windy, I mean, who doesn't love Windy? It's a really powerful tool. It really helps with spot forecasts. We also use what's called VisaWeb, which is Environment Canada's sort of internal weather model platform. SpotWX is a fantastic one for when we need to write a spot forecast for a very specific point. And then we even have a viewer to look at radiosondes or vertical profiles of the atmosphere to help us diagnose places of instability, things like that. So there are a lot of tools that we can use there. Now, we put all of those to good use. So as I mentioned, every single day, we actually give us our briefing throughout the peak of fire season. So it's just on Teams, as many of you use. And that's something that I try to keep lighthearted and interesting. I mean, specifically, I've done various waiting games at the beginning where I try to get people to guess the flag or the album, something to just bring a little bit of light to the overall fire season day. We then write those text forecasts, which essentially is, you could just think of as almost a transcript of what we would be saying in our briefing that morning, just having it in a written document. There's also a provincial text forecast. So if you're trying to see what's going on from a provincial level, that gets written by our lead forecaster of the day. As I mentioned, we issue out weather warnings. And then we also generate these maps. So using weather parameters here like temperature, wind speed, and relative humidity, all of these get created based on the data that we input. And then beyond that, we actually come up with our charts of our fire weather indices. So this would be a look at the fine fuel moisture code, the FFMC, and just gives a nice visual way to essentially see how dry it is in the topmost layer across the province at any given point. Then, of course, we have those actual spot forecasts, and then we have venting forecasts, and then we have seasonal outlook. So there is, of course, no shortage of things going on over here, but it keeps us busy, as I said, and we're really grateful to be able to do that. Now, we also, as I mentioned, we have this agile team, right? They're able to create these in-house tools for us. So specifically, something like the HFI calculator, not going into too much detail, but that's a tool that allows each fire center to set their preparedness level. It takes in our weather inputs, it shows how warm and dry and windy it's going to be, and it matches it with a fuel type, and then is able to calculate the HFI, which is the head fire intensity. And this allows the fire center to decide how many resources they need. But then we have various internal programs like our Fire Weather app, which shows us real-time values of all of our weather station data across the province. And then that can be displayed on a dashboard or on Wildfire One, which is kind of like our home here in BC for all things weather related. So very grateful to have all of those tools at our disposal. Going forward, though, one of the things that we're going to be talking about for this season and beyond is kind of trying to find this balance between things. We're wanting to really automate and simplify as many of our manual tasks as we possibly can. So, for example, those days where I'm manually forecasting out 3 to 5 days, we're trying to come up with a way to make this a little less tedious and make it more of a better use of our time, shall we say. So there's some ongoing work with that. Of course, every organization wants to be more efficient. And so for us specifically, it wants to improve the distribution of forecast information. I mean, anyone who's tuning in from a government agency today knows how many emails you get on any given day. Like some people, it's literally 100 a day. So we're trying to move away from just spamming people's inboxes with weather information, maybe designing an all-encompassing platform where people can extract that information without needing to see the inbox kind of clog up. Now, in terms of another key point here, one of the things that we need to work on is how do we adapt to increasingly demanding and longer fire seasons while avoiding burnout? And I will speak from a very personal story here, and on behalf of those in the Prince George Fire Center, 2023 full stop absolutely rocked us. That was probably the worst season that any of us had ever experienced. And it was really, honestly, quite traumatic for many of us. And I know quite a few people needing to actually do some soul searching and figure out if they needed to get some professional help, what could they do to help come down from that type of season? So it really brought to light the importance of recognizing that our mental health cannot be jeopardized. We need to find ways to find a balance between it as these seasons are getting longer and more intense. Of course, we're also trying to foster internal and external relationships. So that could be our stakeholders, our local communities, maybe even our local wildlife. This would be Mo the Moose from 2023, perhaps one of my most favorite adorable pictures I have ever seen. We found a little baby moose adjacent to one of the fires, and we were able to get that moose into a rehab center into the BC Peace region. So that was a great way to foster some connections. And then, of course, we want to continue to grow our team and our impact within the wildfire service. So my last slide here is really just going to be talking about food for thought, meaning some of the questions that we as forecasters are kind of mulling over and trying to figure out where we're going to go when it comes to looking ahead. So one of the main things is that BC, we're realizing we may need to start relying on interagency support for future seasons. But the question is, what happens when there isn't enough help to go around? We saw this in 2023 when most forecasters across the country were dealing with some of the worst fire conditions they had seen in their entire careers. My heart goes out to people like Olivier who are working in Quebec, and there was only a handful of them dealing with an absolutely unprecedented number of fires. There just aren't enough people to go around to do the job. So how do we actually manage that? And when we look at BC specifically, in the past decade, 7 of those years were our busiest fire seasons on record. So how do we prepare ourselves even more for challenging years ahead? Because there are only so many bodies and brains to go around. What can we do to help extend the life of our people who are doing those forecasts? And then one of the questions is, are we able to maybe bring in temporary meteorologists from outside of BC? I mean, if you are one and you want to come work for us, even on a temporary basis, please, I would be so happy. Just know that there's a bit of a learning curve when it comes to using some of our in-house tools, and forecasting in BC is a pretty complex endeavor. We have tons of beautiful mountains and lakes and rivers, but all of these make forecasting really quite challenging. And then the last one that I would say here is that we're trying to figure out if we can do anything when it comes to implementing machine learning or AI going forward, because that's definitely on the cusp, what every organization I think is questioning right now. So is there any way for us to make use of that as we go forward? So that is going to be it for me in terms of my presentation and walking you through a day in the life of what's going on. I just again wanted to thank all of you for taking the time a second time round to tune in and listen to what I have to say. If you have any questions or comments for me specifically, please feel free to email me. It's a pretty straightforward email address, brett.soderholm@gov.bc.ca. But otherwise, if not, I'm going to hand it back over to Karen, and I think we're going to go through a bit more of our panel discussion. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Brett. That was great. I really enjoyed your day in the life of, and you hit it like right on the nail, because I scribbled down, I'm like, when do you get days off? So thank you. Thank you for
You're welcome.
answering that. I just want to ask one follow-up question on that, though, before we jump into the panel.
Yeah.
When you do cycle out for your 3 days, how do you cover off for each other?
Exactly. So I had mentioned that we have those beautiful contractors. They appeared, there are like 8 list of names within the box there. So when we have to schedule our days off, we need to make sure that one of them is going to be able to cover for us. And the tricky part is that not all of them are necessarily trained up for every single fire center. Some are more than others. So we really need to be quite strategic. And frankly, I'm kind of glad I don't need to worry about the scheduling myself. That ends up being Christina Van Eaton. She uses her magical powers to figure out who's qualified for what given desk. And when we request our reset days, she tries to have someone who fills in for us in that time. But frankly, when it comes to trying to take a break in July or August, it's actually quite challenging. A lot of people want to take off vacation, and sometimes there just aren't enough bodies to go around. So that's how we would do it.
Thank you. And yeah, it's worth pointing out too, there's some real intrinsic differences in the BC fire zones, with a lot of different factors that, you have ocean effect, you have mountains, you have all of these things that if you've never forecasted for that kind of terrain or area, I'm sure it has a lot of nuances to it. So thanks for pointing
Exactly.
that out.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so what I would like to do is welcome our 3 other panelists to turn on their cameras if they would like, and we'll jump into the panel discussion. I do have a few questions that I am going to ask the panelists. To our audience, if you have any other questions popping up, please feel free to post them in the chat. If time permits, we'll do our best to answer them. If we don't get to them, I will do my best to save them, reach out to our panelists after, and get you an answer. So the first question that I was going to ask, and Brett, I think you answered this in your presentation, but I'll give you first go in case you want to add anything. But what got you into fire weather meteorology?
Yeah, I touched on the fact that this was not a career path that I ever saw myself going into. And frankly, it was the pandemic that brought me into this. I'm not going to lie. I was on a specific contract, a maternity leave contract for CBC Vancouver. And when that ended, they were like, well, you're not coming back because we don't have any money for you. So good luck. So I was honestly just doing a search out there being like, is there any job? Is there anyone that needs a meteorologist? Is there something I can do? And in my job search, found out that there was this type title called a fire weather forecaster. I was like, what on earth is that? I mean, I like fire, but I didn't know that that was something you could even do growing up in humid Southern Ontario. So really, just by pure dumb luck, doing a search in sort of mid 2020, that's what got me in. And honestly, there's no looking back. I'm so grateful with that step that I made, and yeah, really happy to be a part of this team now.
Thanks, Brett. I'm going to ask the same question to Alice. Alice, what got you into fire weather forecasting? Oh, you just need to unmute, Alice.
I'm
There you go.
sorry. Yeah, I said just said as a long story. I was doing forecasting for the Eastern Coast for those private company before, and then suddenly for some reason I think, hey, why not just go back to the university and then get a degree, because I was educated outside of Canada, and I think, yeah, maybe learn a little bit more in Canada and try to get a degree here and see what happened in the future of my career. So I went back to UA, got my degrees from U of A, and then by the time I'm trying to look for my job, I see kind of a lot of a job available, but fire weather meteorologist or fire weather forecasting job title that catch my attention, because I never in this area before. And then I see, I forecast for the oceans, I forecast for the land and cities, or for everything we forecast, but never been a fire. So that catch my attention, and then I see, hey, why not to try it? And then by the time that post is from Saskatchewan, and then I got that job and got into Saskatchewan. So interesting, because and that's my real time to see the first forest fire, which is just north of P8, Prince Albert. So that's really interesting. So that's why I don't know how get that caught for my attention with that, but then that's led to my past for this fire weather forecasting. And then after the training with the Hinton, advanced behavior things, I kind of love into that, because the indices things kind of, make me a new world to understand what happened to this forest area, right? So, and then I kind of try it again, and then come to Alberta, when they have a kind of vacations, not vacation, vacancy, sorry. I kind of mix up the term again, but that's how led me to this fire weather forecasting back in 2011. I think that's almost 14, 15 years almost. Yeah.
Thanks, Alice. So you mentioned that you cut your teeth in fire weather forecasting by PA Saskatchewan. So I'm going to hop over to PA and put the same question to Alicia. Alicia, how did you find yourself in this role?
So basically I went to the U of A, same as Alice, and then I took a fire weather forecasting class. Mike Flanagan taught that, and that really sparked my interest in fire weather meteorology. And then I actually worked for Alice at Alberta Wildfire there, and I did 3 summers, I think, working for them as like a fire weather assistant, kind of just printing out all the maps and data collection and all of that. And then when there was a job opening in PA, I applied here, and now I've been here for 5 years. So, yeah.
Awesome, thank you. And Henry, same question to you. How did you find yourself as a fire weather forecaster or chief meteorologist now?
Okay, so basically I was in the military for 30 years doing weather. I started as a weather observer, then a briefer, and then I went to sea and was a forecaster at sea. Then I did my short range forecasting for airfields, which is producing TAFs and writing MEDARs also. And one of my friends, Ray Fonger, had worked for Ontario during his holiday, as they were short, and he told me, he said, well, you forecast at sea, so when we did calculate the waves and the swell with the winds, and he said, well, fire is basically you calculate the fire intensity with the winds, but now I learned that's also RH temperature, instability. So looking, when I retired, I was still young from the military. I was in the 40s after 30 years. And so I was looking for a job, and it was a job first in Chibougamau for weather observing. They had a good salary, but then I talked to my neighbor that lived there for a while, and he says, Chibougamau is in the middle of nowhere, so milk is $5 a jug, and that was in 2003 because everything had to be brought from Chicoutimi all the way north to Chibougamau. If anybody know where that is, that's quite far north. So this position in Prince Albert open, and my daughter and her husband were posted in Cold Lake as he's in the military also. So we went to visit them for Christmas, and I called Daniel Poirier at the time, who was a chief meteorologist, and I visited the office, and I like what I saw, and I applied for the job. And I was the meteorologist until 2017 and became the chief in 2017. And this year will be my last year, as I will be retiring after 50 years in meteorology.
Amazing. Thank you. Such a great story. The next question I was going to ask was about your career path, but I feel like all of you did a really excellent job integrating that into how you became or how you got into fire weather meteorology. And I find it really interesting that the majority almost like fell into it by accident. I also fell into fire by accident, like Alice and like Alicia. I came up through the U of A. Also, Mike Flanagan was my catalyst for getting into fire, and I did my master's degree with him after thinking I would become a geologist. So it's neat to meet a group of people that didn't follow the traditional route of coming up through forestry and, you know, doing those years slogging on crews. We're implants. That's what I call us. We're the implant population into fire. So thanks for having us, Fire. We have some really great questions in the chat. Before I jump into those, I wanted to know, I'm just going to leave this open. Feel free to jump in. Do either or any of you four have advice for someone who might be interested in the role? Maybe things like if you know of opportunities for summer jobs, internships, ways to get experience, or just to understand and learn more. I'll let whoever wants to hop in, hop in.
Yeah, so I'm in the process of hiring meteorologists. And what I find is weakness is nobody take a course on operational meteorology. And there's one giving in New York that I know of, and I think one in Dalhousie. So they learn how to do operational meteorology, like analyzing charts and doing prediction, forecasting. Most of the atmospheric physics or the meteorology course, they teach a lot about the models and how to read them and stuff like this, but not to implant them into an operational system. So I think that the best thing is to find a course that give you operational meteorology.
Thanks, Henry. Alice, I know you have summer students there.
Yeah, I really agree with Henry. That's the problem right now we are facing. In the last couple of years, when we hired the new meteorologists, they are kind of they mostly good at looking at the model outputs, get all the data out there, just kind of input it from the forecasting numbers based on strictly on the model, because they don't really necessarily have good training for drawing the map, analyzing the weather pattern, or have a little bit local knowledge for the topography, things like that. So these kind of things must be trained by mentorship, I think. If the university did not offer it right now, I don't think they have a lot to offer outside, especially in Canada. But the states still offer those training. They call it as kind of a either synoptic meteorology or operational meteorology or any weather analysis, things like that. So that kind of a skills, it's not really offering in Canada. So that's bizarre for us, and we would like to have some kind of internship. Even I was talking to my supervisor or manager, and they agree with that. But the thing is, we don't have enough budget for supporting this kind of internship. But if some other university or even Canada had that kind of a scholarship or internship things, that would be great. We just need something kind of a mentoring and kind of on-the-job training, hands-on experience to help them to really identify the weather things, not just straight output from the model, because the model just a lot, but you throw in the parameter with observation initially for the 12 hours before, 6 hours before, and then output it into whatever time frame you wanted to see. But that's strictly out of from the model, which is calculation only. And then the weather is changing all the time. The weather pattern will be changing as long goes by. So those newer conditions will never be able to inject it into the model output. So you have to have an understanding for the two things, what's going on at this time, at this moment, and then based on the current pattern and current observation to adjust those model outputs. So that's what we want to see. We try to use the model, we try to use the AI, we try to use the machine learning, everything, but they are tools only. But that's not their skills that can, make our forecast even more perfect or more accurate for the real world. So that's what I can input here. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a really important note. I think that human intelligence is like a critical component. And I think that Brett touched on this as well, that knowing your area and knowing what the typical is there, like when you live somewhere, it's a traditional knowledge as well, right? You know that in certain circumstances, you'll have a downslope wind, or you'll see confluence through a channel, things like that. And a model can't always synthesize all of those different things and caveats into that. You need a human who's able to do that. There are a couple notes in the chat. One says that they believe University of Manitoba does have some operational context in their courses. And then I like the note here, especially the storm chaser course. So I know like U of A, I don't know if they still do, but they had a pretty active storm chasing club back when I was at U of A. But again, it's not fire specific, it's tornado chasing, which is equally as fun. Did anyone want to add anything to the opportunities, Alicia?
Not to the opportunities, but can I do advice for
Absolutely.
students and new meteorologists? I do have something written down, so ignore the fact that I'm reading. So just for advice, develop a thick skin because people will joke and you'll face skepticism about your forecast and being a meteorologist. It's going to happen. And while it's not always fun, don't take it personally. Learn to handle it with professionalism and confidence. Your work will speak for itself. I've been asked about forecasts and thunderstorms. One example was that I forecasted a thunderstorm, and why I forecasted them because they didn't occur in the town that this person was in, but on the lightning map, they did occur, and it was just to the east of the town that they were in. So I was right. They were wrong. 2, maintain a work-life balance. It's crucial to separate your professional life from your personal life. While it's natural to be curious about weather patterns, remember that you don't have to be a meteorologist 24/7. You don't need to have the answers for every weather-related question that your friends and family ask. Like my brother will ask me all the time if it'll rain, and I tell him 50-50 chance. I don't work for him. He knows where to check his forecasts and the websites that I've shown him. Number 3, expect imposter syndrome. I had that. Don't worry about it. Everyone feels like they don't know enough when they're starting out. It's normal to have those "what am I doing here" moments, but stick with it, give it a season, and by year 2, your confidence will grow significantly. The feeling is temporary, and you'll be surprised at how much you improve. My first year was rough. I remember struggling internally, and you are your own worst critic. My second year was really busy, but I had a bit more confidence, and my confidence grew immensely when I had an executive director tell me halfway through the year, or no, my director told me in the hallway that I was doing a great job and to keep it up, and that most forecasters would have crumbled under the pressure. Number 4, mistakes are part of the process. Forecasting is about predicting the future, and no one is perfect. You will make mistakes. It's okay. With each experience, you'll build the expertise and confidence that everyone talks about. Learn from the bad forecasts. For example, I missed overnight lightning before. Why? Because of mid-level instability that I didn't notice. Now I make sure to check for that instability overnight so I don't miss a ton of lightning overnight again. And finally, think about communication and presentation skills, which I got to work on. You'll be conveying information to a variety of people, those who understand the technical side of meteorology and the jargon that comes along with it, and those who may not. So just be ready to explain things if they have questions, ask for feedback. Do people understand? Is there ways you can provide necessary information to your people more effectively, and those types of things? That is all.
Thank you, Alicia. And you did wonderful. Beautiful advice. And thank you for bringing it down to the human level. We're all human. And I think we all experience that no matter what career we're in. I know I still have imposter syndrome quite often, and I have been in this role for quite a long time. So I think it's something that our world is changing. The weather's changing, the climate's changing, the forests are changing, and all of us in this role are coming into unprecedented times and events. And I think we all can identify with that in some way. So thank you for that.
I just also wanted to say, like, Alicia, that was beautiful. I wish that could be in either a poster or a document that we could just have in like an onboarding manual, because frankly, everything that you just described hit way too close to home. Like, it sounds like we've both been in our careers for about 5 years as fire weather forecasters, and I went through that exact trajectory. So that's just so comforting for me to hear someone else from a different agency know that they know exactly what I went through as well. So I really, really appreciate you taking the time to say that. That was beautiful.
I vote for Alicia to make a poster and
Yes.
send it around, and we can all print it. So I know, Brett, you answered this question about fire centers having dedicated weather forecasters, so all but 2 in BC. I know the context across Canada is very different because each province and territory manages fire and their forecast groups differently. So Alice, did you want to talk about how Alberta manages forecasts? And the question was, does each fire center, or in this case, it would be each area office, have a dedicated weather forecaster?
Yeah, thank you for giving me this opportunity to tell about Alberta. Alberta only have 4 meteorologists. Right now, we have the one brand new from, we brought it or steal it from Saskatchewan, but but 4 of us kind of running off on the shift schedule. Good things that we are not the longer shift time as the Saskatchewan and BC. We work from 7.25 hours every day, from about 8 o'clock to 4 o'clock or 4:30. But then we did not have the weather forecast ready for the region until 10 o'clock, and then give the weather briefing by 10:30. So we kind of a little bit late behind compared to the our neighbors, and they give the weather briefing about 9 to 9:30. We have that a little bit later because we mostly rely on the 12 Zulu model guidance. And I believe the other people, neighbors, they use the 001 from last night for the morning 9 a.m.'s weather briefing, because by that time, 9 a.m. is not already yet. So we rely on the 12 Zulu model output or the guidance, and we don't strictly use those number output directly from the model. We have to play around that with all the adjustment, with our knowledge, with our expertise, and finally come up with a solution for our forecast. And we do twice daily weather briefing, as well as twice daily weather forecast. Our morning one focus on today's burning period, and our PM forecast or PM briefing will be focused on the next burning period, which is tomorrow. So we have 4 of us running on a schedule in a centralized weather center or office here in Edmonton, the headquarters. And then we have every day we'll have 1 duty meteorologist, and then all the other 3 will be supported for either spot forecast or phone calls or anything else supporting the data request as well. And but then we're running off kind of 3 days on or 2 days on, and then a couple of days off. And our duty meteorologist will be 3 days or 2 days, and then after that will be into the support desk and helping each other. So basically, we kind of have a busy schedule. As long as not many spot forecasts, we kind of okay. But if more than 10 spot forecasts a day, that will be really crazily busy, because I believe each of the spot needs to be at least 1 to 2 hours to be generated. Depends on how detailed level do you want for that spot forecast. So we are quite busy. We hope we can have more meteorologists to trying to kind of dividing our whole province into different area like BC to do the things for each of the area, which is we can be more focused on that particular location with the topography and their climatology, things like that. But so far, we possibly don't have the budget yet until we have a kind of seeing more support from the higher government level. But at this time, we only have 4 and dealing with all the things. And yeah, compared to BC, I'm so jealous because they have almost 15 people in total. That's amazing. So we should borrow your people too to help us. We need the spot forecast support, maybe something like that. But that's how we operate it. And we do have some kind of a support from the weather data input as well and data quality control. I'm not sure whether the other agencies have that kind of group of people supporting getting the data, weather data, the maps, and everything's ready for the duty meteorologists. And so we have another 3 supporting desk for the entire weather group, and that's what Alicia says. She was working with us as a support desk group of people, and she have a little bit training in between that kind of time period. That's good for her. So that's kind of even you're not on a desk doing forecasting, but then you can see everything's what's going on inside the office. So I encourage every people, if you wanted to be a weather tech, just so maybe kind of contact us if we have a summer job to be open for public competitions. You can definitely want to apply. That's a good way to start for your meteorological career in the future, if that is something you like. Yeah, that's how Alberta do.
Yeah, so I used to work for Alberta, and it's amazing that the forecasters there are doing, like, when you sit into those briefings, it's the full province, which has got to be a lot. So Alicia and Henry, do either of you or both of you want to hop in and tell us about how it's handled with in Saskatchewan through SPSA?
Okay, so for us is we're supposed to be 3 meteorologists, but right now there's only 2. As like Alice said, she stole one of us. She's in Palau. And Alice was working here and got stolen from Alberta too. And BC stole a couple of forecasters in the early 2000s. So almost every 2 or 3 years, we have to hire a new meteorologist so far. And this year, we're going to hire 2. One is we give him a verbal agreement, but he has to pass he has to do some paperwork, and he has to pass those paperwork. But for us, we start at 6:30 in the morning, and during the summer, between the 1st of April and the 1st of November, and we finish at 4. And we could come earlier or later, depending on the emergency. If there's emergency after 4 o'clock, we have to stay. A lot of people say, "Oh yeah, you're a meteorologist, you don't do nothing." Like Alicia mentioned, that people always joke, meteorologists, you just look at cloud, you don't do nothing. But we do. In the summer, we have to have 6 map ready before 9:30. We have to have at least one FWI forecast for the noon, and then it's verified. So, and then and we have to do a synopsis and a tabular forecast, and then at 9:30, and all of that have to be done by 9:30. After the briefing, we doing the tomorrow synopsis and the tomorrow FWI's forecast, which include also an FBP forecast. And then after lunch with the new models and stuff like this, we verify our forecast, and if we have to amend it, we do. And we have to do a surface analysis at noon. We have internal computer checker for all our station. We verify, and we look at them. This morning there was 40 station that had red saying that something was wrong. So I look at them, and I noticed that's because the critical point was some of the temperature was in the -30, which did happen. So after I checked them all, there was no adjustment to be done. And then I submit them all. At lunchtime, we do the same thing with the checker. Make sure, see how many station have something, and they always say temperature or max temperature. And a lot of the time, it's just that it really happened. It's just that we have criteria for each month, and if the temperature is outside that criteria, then it's flagged. The same thing with the wind. If we have a wind, for example, that's at 20 kilometers an hour, and there's a gust to 75 due to a thunderstorm, well, this 75 is going to be flagged. So we just make sure that all that is okay. And for the actual FWI, we have an actual review. So we make sure all the stations are there, all the data are right. I mean, for example, Porcupine, I changed it yesterday because the wind says 00. And it's because our anemometer is not working there. Also, in the morning with all that stuff, if there's a spot forecast, usually the spot forecast has to be done before 9 and then before 3 in the afternoon, if it's twice a day. And then the above 5 spot forecast, especially in the morning. On Wednesday, the two meteorologists are exchanging their shifts. So we work 8 on, 6 off. So they start Wednesday, finish the next Wednesday. And then they got 6 days off, except if there's a statutory holiday, then they got 7 days off. In August this year, we're going to have 2 stat holidays. So somebody's going to have 8 days off. So I'm not sure where this. But yeah, so when I'm there, I'm going to help the forecaster with the spot forecast one. And if I ask them which spot forecasts they want me to do. And on Wednesday, the incoming forecaster is going to do the spot forecast, and the outgoing forecaster is going to do them in the afternoon as right after the briefing, they shift. One take over the normal schedule and the other one take over the spots.
Thanks,
Did I forget anything, Alicia?
I think Brett got green with envy there hearing about your shift.
Pretty
so
sure that was
have-
visible on my face. I can't imagine just getting 6 days off after only working 8 or something. That would be a dream come true.
We only have about 4 minutes left, so there are a lot of really great questions in the chat. I am just going to pick one, and like I said, I'll do my best to send out answers to the remaining ones if our panelists are able to answer them after. I'm going to leave this one open to whoever jumps in first. We only have 4 minutes though. Do you do any forecast verification exercises or analysis at the end of the year? Or do you do any follow-up or debriefing for more troublesome events or cases?
Yeah, in Saskatchewan we do. We use equation of statistic equation to verify a region, because especially in the summer when most of the precipitation are showery type, so unstable precipitation. So if we say it's going to rain, so the model or whatever showing that the precipitation is going to be over La Ronge, but the shower decide to go a little bit further north and hit Pine House, for example. So that's why we do a region, not the stations. That's why we use equation. I don't have them with me, but so we do a balance of the region. And so for our today's forecast, we around 98%. For the two more forecasts, we around 95. And in the afternoon, we redo another an update on our tomorrow's forecast. And this is a bit higher, 96%. And the extended forecast for 3 days, we around 92%. So we do verify our forecasts. And when I work with the D&D and Northern Canada, the 24-hour forecast was close to us, but anything after that was a little bit below what we do in Saskatchewan.
Thanks, Henry. Brett, I saw you also were planning to jump in, so I'll
Yeah.
give you a chance.
Just super quickly saying we don't have a sort of like formal process in place right now, but one of the things that we like to do is for sure chat with people who are actually out there on the fire and who are taking weather readings for us. So sometimes our weather stations might not actually be exactly close to where their fire is. So it's a really crucial sort of two-way street where if I'm putting out a forecast and it was going to be X temperature with Y winds, if someone is on site, they feed me that information back and I can see how close I was. And that allows me to change my forecast in real time. And then we are working on a program right now to do verification of our forecast for our specific weather stations for a couple of days out. But that's still kind of a work in progress as it is right now, but something we'd like to get to soon.
Thank you, Brett. Alice, we have 1 minute if you want to hop in. If not, I can continue.
No, continue, please. Yeah, thank you so
Oh,
much.
okay. So we have a minute left. I would like to take this time to just thank everyone for coming and participating, listening in, providing excellent questions in the chat box. I'm sorry we did not have time to get to all of them. And I would like to thank our 4 panelists. I know, well, fire season started in Alberta already. And I know the lead up to fire season can be very busy. Henry was typing away his forecast this morning while we were meeting before the session. Thank you for taking the time. I know it's not an easy thing to fit into your schedule, especially twice. I'm so appreciative and I feel very honored to have been able to take part in this session, get to know the 4 of you better, and to hopefully be able to share a bit of what it's like to be a fire weather forecaster and maybe inspire some current students or recent graduates that it's a really fun field. And I know everyone will say their field is a family, but fire is a real family. So thank you everyone for coming. Have a wonderful weekend, and I wish you all a safe fire season.